All right, so I don't know if you think that's all wicked cool or not. I think it's wicked cool, but I'm me. So let's move on to this other kid. This other kid named Brahmagupta. So um, as far as numbers go, zero is kind of the new kid on the block. Zero hasn't been around as long as the other numbers. Zero is a little bit more complex and a little bit more abstract, harder to think of than the other numbers, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We understand absence or nothing, but to draw a circle around nothing, to symbolize or signify nothing, it's a newer idea. And probably the oldest example in human history that we have of the number zero comes from this kid named Brahmagupta. Brahmagupta was an Indian Advaita and Hindu philosopher and theologian from India. Indian means around around 700 CE or something like that. And he wrote this text called the Brahmasputta Siddhanta. Brahmagupta was, he was best known, I think, as a mathematician and also as a philosopher, theologian, and also as an astronomer, so sort of a budding scientist in terms of astronomy and studying the stars and the movement of the planets and that sort of thing. Very observant in those sense, trying to figure out, this cosmos in which we live. And in this textbook, Brahmasputta Siddhanta, where there's a lot of math equations, a lot of math proofs, and some of them he came up with himself. I think a lot of them anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is that this, as far as most scholars are concerned, is the oldest human example of the number zero. And so I wanted to look up this passage because I've seen it translated a lot. I've seen people say, he was the first one to come up with the number zero and talk about the number zero. And they always quote this passage from the Brahmasputta Siddhanta. But I wanted to look it up. I wanted to see, what is this sentence that everybody's talking about? So if we go back to this old text where we have the first example, or not the first, but the oldest extant example that we have of usage of the number zero, then we find, I'm paraphrasing here because it's a longer verse, but the sentence basically is Shunyam Shunyat Rina Akasha. Shunyam Shunyat Rina Akasha. And typically in the books that I've seen, so many scholars that keep bringing up Brahmagupta, and I think on Wikipedia too, then the way they translate this is 0 minus 0 equals 0. That doesn't quite line up because Rina actually means it was sort of taken away from, or like a debt, something taken away from 0. So 0 taken away from 0 equals Akasha. And then they translate that 0 minus 0 equals 0. But you're like, who cares? Why are you even giving me the Sanskrit? But I don't know Sanskrit. But even if you don't know any Sanskrit at all, maybe you can see what's wrong with this translation. Shunyam Shunyat Rina Akasha. 0 minus 0 equals 0. But even in the Sanskrit, you can see, right, that the same word is repeated twice here, but it's not repeated a third time. So shunyam, emptiness. Shunyam means emptiness, right? Emptiness, that emptiness of form. Form is emptiness of form. That rupam shunyata, shunyateva rupam. Shunya means emptiness. So 0 is a fine translation of that. 0 minus 0 equals, but then you would expect another shunyam here, right? They would expect the same word here if it's going to be 0 minus, you get the point. But we don't have the word shunyam here. We have the word Akasha. Now, Akasha in Sanskrit, probably the simplest, most straightforward translation of it would just be space. But it also, Akasha, it means space in the sense of like all space, like all of existence, right? It can also mean the universe, like, and ultimate reality, Brahman and everything. Akasha can mean space in the biggest sense of the word, right? But it just means, space. I think space in all the different ways that we take that to mean in English, and its vagueties, vagaries, vagueness.
Vagueness?
Vagueness.
Vagueness?
Vagueness.
Vagueness?
Vagueness. vagueness, whatever. And all the words that we understand the word space to mean, I think we can also take it just Akasha literally to mean space, but it doesn't mean zero. It does not mean zero. It does not mean emptiness. So I think maybe a better translation of shunyam shunyat rina Akasha might be zero taken away from zero equals zero minus zero equals, right? Who cares? Who cares, right? Why does any of this stuff matter? Why am I asking you to who cares? All right, well, bear with me. I'll convince you why it matters. But first, let's do a quick review. All right, so what is a circle? A circle is an infinite series of dimensionless points equidistant from a single dimensionless point, right? An infinite series of dimensionless points equidistant from a single dimensionless point, right? And what's the definition of zero that we gave? Well, zero is a signifier which signifies nothingness. How does it signify nothingness? By drawing a circle around it, which then signifies that, but it turns that nothing into a something, as we already made clear, right? So zero is a signifier which signifies nothingness by drawing a circle around nothingness, thereby turning that nothingness into a something. But Brahmagupta is saying, well, all right, let's see. Just in the most obvious school kid kind of sense, which one would you say, on which side of the equal side is closer to nothing? Which side of the equal side is closer to nothing? 0 minus 0, nothing minus nothing, or obviously nothing is, this is more nothing than this, right? This is nothing. 0 minus 0, that's nothing, right? Nothing minus nothing is my bank account. But this side, this is even this is like I don't have a bank account, right? My bank account has been erased. Thank you, 2020. Yeah, right? So what? So the point is that in order to indicate or signify nothing, zero draws a circle around that nothing, thereby turning that nothing into a something, which is a signifier, which mentally is an intellectual division. We're dividing up the infinite nothingness into two nothingnesses, right? The nothing that's inside the circle and the nothingness that's outside of the circle. So A and not A, which is a paradox, right? Since it's a paradox because the point of drawing the circle is in order to indicate nothing, but by indicating nothingness, by drawing a circle around it, you've turned that something into a nothing. You've created a nothingness. You've enabled nothing to be, nothing to come into being. Great, fantastic. But the point wasn't to call something into being. The point was to hold the place of nothing, then allow nothing to be. But by allowing nothing to be, we've caused nothing to be, which then means a something. So Brahmagupta's point is that if we want to signify something and communicate this idea of nothingness, then the way we communicate the idea of nothing is by first drawing a circle around nothing and then subtracting the signifier, right? In other words, by drawing a circle around nothing, look, there's nothing here, but then saying, actually, I don't just mean this nothing or that nothing, I just really mean nothing. Nothing. So what? So what? I'll tell you so what. So there's this kid, the Buddha. We're going to talk more about the Buddha later, but I already talked about the Buddha in the first yuga on the Enso meditation. Now let's talk about the Buddha in a different sense. So the Buddha gave this familiar example. This is actually much older than Buddha. It doesn't matter, but the Buddha's the one who made it famous. He posted on Instagram, it went famous, it went viral. Anyway, Buddha has this example of a pointing finger. He says, suppose I want to show somebody the moon, right? So I want to point, in order to show them the moon, I have to point at the moon, right? And say, ooh, the moon, look, right? And if they want to see what I'm pointing at, they first have to do what? In order to see what I'm pointing at, where's the first place you look? Do you look at the place that I'm pointing at? The first place you have to look is at my finger, right? My finger is the signifier. It's signifying. It's a sign that's saying, look that way, right? Now, I want you to look at my finger so that you can see that at which my finger points. But in order to see that at which my finger points, you must first look at the finger, right? The finger is a signifier. It signifies that towards which it signifies, that towards which it points. But if you just look at my finger and then spend all day looking at my finger and the chalk on it now, right? Then you will never see that at which my finger points, right? So insofar as 0 is a signifier which signifies nothing, when we look at the 0, we tend to see the 0 rather than the nothing that the 0 holds in place, right? So the 0 isn't so much the 0 as the nothingness inside of it, right? So the Buddha's point was, in order to see the moon, in order to show you the moon, I first point at the moon, and then you look at my pointing finger, but then you have to look away from my pointing finger. If you just stare at it all day, you never see the moon. So the signifier is a tool, right? We're talking about philosophical tools today. The signifier is a tool which points towards something that is signified by the signifier. But if we aren't careful, then we can confuse the two, the phenomenon and the thing itself, the thing as it appears to my conscious mind and the thing itself, right? Or the 0 and that which the 0 signifies. The 0 is just a placeholder for nothingness. It holds the place of nothing. Kind of cool, kind of awesome, I think it's awesome. Hope you do too. I'm going to have a drink. Let's have a drink and then we'll go to some logic.